On it. Ah, okay, great. Perfect. Welcome everyone. I know we're in the last home stretch to food, which is always it can be a dicey one. So we'll try to keep it engaging here so that nobody falls asleep. So I'm Kim. I'm the executive director for Naturally New England. Naturally New England was formed by a board of folks from within the CPG community. So CPG is consumer packaged goods. I'm going to nail this one, you guys. A lot of people wonder, well, what is CPG? It's literally any consumer product that you're buying from the store. So whether it's food, beverage, beauty products, pet food, we even work with some folks that make organic clothing or cactus leather bags and shoes. So there's a full broad range of products that fall into the CPG industry. And so folks from within the CPG industry, within the New England region specifically, got together to create this chapter of the Naturally Network to support all of the small founders and entrepreneurs in the community that are working to build the next generation of products. So everything that's on the cutting edge with respect to sustainability, accessibility, we're hitting all of the kind of front runners that are trying to build the next thing. So what we do is we bring together people in community. We do events, we do conferences like this, we do forums, education, and it's really the entire organization is pulled together to empower the community of leaders for tomorrow. So the panel that we pull together are indeed members of our network. We have everything from suppliers to retailers to investors within the network. And here on our panel today, we have several of our brands represented, as well as a food incubation program. And to my left here, Tania, I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, but helps bring food from the supply chain, from the supply source to institutions. So if you guys could introduce yourselves to the community, what you do, and actually the first question for our discussion today is more than what you do, why do you do what you do?
Should I start?
You can start.
Hello, thanks so much for having me here today. I'm really, this is great. This has been an amazing day. I really appreciate hearing all of the work that people are putting into this food system. And yes, my name is Tania Taranovski. I work for Farm to Institution New England, or FINE, and I'm a little bit of an outlier on this panel because I do work for a nonprofit, not for a food business. But we are a network support organization that is looking to try to bring together everyone from producers through institutions across the value chain, and then help bring in the kind of resources, information, connections that really help build the kind of relationships that are critical to making our food system work. And ultimately, the why, I come into this work from a real interest in conservation. And food is the place where I think we really can make a difference. It's from how we grow it to what we're choosing to eat, all the way up through. Every choice that's made around the food system impacts our environment and impacts our health. And that also, in turn, impacts the environment. It is a system, and everything plays into it. And so for me, it's a very exciting place to work. Before coming to FINE, I worked for the New England Aquarium and the Sustainable Seafood Program, and so seafood is also really near and dear to my heart, and I always want to be talking about our food system with a mind both to what's happening on Earth as well as in the sea. So institutions, I just want to say, are a small part of the food system puzzle, but they're also a really important one. They're a small buyer in the grand scheme of things, but when you think about it, there's something like in New England, I think it's like 12, I wrote down the number because I never remember the numbers, that 4 million New Englanders, which is about 25% of our population, spends time at an institution, a school, a college like this one, a hospital, prison or jail, every day. That's a huge influence. And when you think about it, institutions are feeding some of our most vulnerable populations too. School children who are getting a good chunk, often breakfast and lunch, and sometimes snacks and other meals come through the schools. Prisons where every single thing that they eat is provided through that institution. And we're spending something like less than $4 a meal on average for school kids, less than $3 a day for adult people in prison. So like these are important places that we need to pay attention to, and they also have great influence on what can happen in the food system. So that's my why. Thank you.
Hi everyone, you can hear me? I'm Lisa Scali. I am a co-owner of and the head of sales and marketing for Ocean's Balance. We are a vertically integrated seaweed company. Our production facility is based in Biddeford, and we farm and wild harvest seaweeds up and down the coast of Maine and a little bit into Canada as well. We offer dried seaweeds in flake and whole leaf form and a few value-added products as well. My why. I was born in an Italian family, and if any of you out there are Italian, you'll know what I'm about to say. All we think about is food all the time. We put a meal on the table, and the next thing we're talking about is the next meal that we're going to eat. It's all about food.
Talk with our hands.
And we talk with our hands, yes. So food growing up was a really important part of my childhood and my family glue. I had the very great fortune to be able to live and work in France for about 8 years, and my food palate was broadened while I lived there, and I just learned a whole new cuisine of different flavors, different spices. So my love of food was broadened and deepened. And when I moved to Maine, I was blown away by the food scene here. I moved here to marry my husband, and I just couldn't believe how much food and good food there was on offer. The other point of my why is a statistic. 71% of the earth is covered with water, and that 71% produces 2% of the food that we eat. There's a lot more that we can do with the ocean if we do it carefully and thoughtfully, and that's what we're trying to do. Help people eat more healthy in a sustainable way.
Hello? It is on. My name is Ray Simoglou, and I work for Summit Spring Water, and we are the only gravity-fed spring water company in the world. What does that mean? We only capture Mother Nature's overflow and feed it through gravity into the bottle. Nobody else does this. I've been with Summit for over 20 years, and I guess I would say that along the years and the challenges that we have faced being a family-owned company, my why has changed. When I first came to Summit, I had worked for another company before and had lost my job. And quite frankly, I thought that getting into the ground floor of a company, being somewhat involved in health and fitness, would be fun, a fun experience. It has been entertaining. And after I saw what we actually had, I realized how precious it actually was. And as the years went by and the challenges kind of mounted as far as the hurdles that we had to cross over, being in a highly competitive beverage industry, along came a time around 2009 when we were able to figure out through the state, because our water was so pure and the way we bottled it, that we could actually sell it untreated and unfiltered, 100% from the ground to bottle. Well, along that time, a woman from California who goes by the name of the Allergy Chef on Instagram reached out to us. And she was literally on her deathbed because she could not consume any type of hydration, 1 to 2 ounces a day, and it would cut through her like a knife. And she was told that her internal organs were virtually shutting down. She contacted the owner. They had a great conversation. He immediately, of course, sent some samples out to her. And lo and behold, she was telling her significant other how she wanted the children to be taken care of. Well, lo and behold, she was able to consume the water and had no negative effect on her. You know, knowing this, having a daughter and now 2 grandchildren, I can only think of just, one decision to make to stay, to do the things that need to be done, and to protect something that needs to be protected was the right thing to do. I can't imagine myself not being able to be put in that position, or one of my children to be put in that position, and just not having something available to them to actually sustain life. She's probably our favorite customer. I guess so at the end of the day, I just feel that sometimes we all have journeys, and this is my journey, to speak for the spring because she can't speak for herself, and to protect the spring because she can't protect herself, not only for today, but for future generations as I look at my daughter and my grandchildren, and hopefully they'll have children after that. So that is my why. Thank you.
Well, Ray, now what am I supposed to say? Jesus. Come on, man.
I'm sorry. I should have sat at the end.
All right, well.
Lisa bumped me a couple of
No,
times
it's
to
all good,
stop
it's all good.
speaking.
That's it, we can all go home now.
No, you're good. So now you're going to get to the comic relief between John and I. So I'm Jen Faigel. I am a co-founder and the executive director of Commonwealth Kitchen. We are a nonprofit social enterprise based in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston. We are in the second lowest income census tract in the city of Boston. We say that our mission, we talk about food is our passion, but equity is our mission. We are on a mission to build a food economy that is grounded in racial, social, and economic justice. So while our focus is on food, our work is actually about small business. Because all you've been hearing about is how important small businesses are to our communities, the jobs, the economic opportunity, but also the community. And we also know that not all of us have the same opportunity and the same privilege and access. So Commonwealth Kitchen's work is really about how do we create opportunity for women, immigrants, and people of color to start food businesses as a means to build wealth, as a means to create jobs, as a means to bring culturally relevant food to their community and to improve food access. So how do we put people in a position to be empowered to do that work? I come at this work as a kid of a single parent who had struggles as a kid. And despite this face, running an organization that is about racial justice, I will say to you, this is not, our title is not post-George Floyd. This is who we are and what we care about. Where does my privilege as a white woman in this world, how am I able to show up and be part of a solution to support our business owners? That work is about economic opportunity. I actually spent most of my career doing affordable housing development. Whole different story. But in the world of affordable housing, you pay a percentage of your income on your rent. Even in home ownership, you pay a percentage. You don't actually get to make the same kind of wealth those of us who own our homes do. Home ownership, business ownership, inheritance is the way that you actually have economic opportunity and mobility in the United States. That's it. So we focus on small business as a means of building wealth. So what does that look like? The simplest thing is what a lot of people know about shared kitchens. It's a gym membership for food businesses, right? The hardest part for somebody is the cost of the kitchen. So we provide a kitchen that gives them a place that they can start. They pay by the hour. Yay, kumbaya, we're done. No, you've been hearing how hard it is to run any kind of business. So our organization also really takes a very much of a systems-based approach that is based on if our business is the North Star and our goal is actually building wealth for that business, we have to work with them along the entire path. We provide business education and training. We provide a ton of work around market access. Some of that we do with Tania and others. Our connections are everything from Whole Foods to Harvard to Brigham and Women's Hospital, Sodexo, a whole bunch of other things that are really about how are we actually moving the dime and changing the system and not just working around the edges. Commonwealth Kitchen uniquely also runs our own manufacturing operation. So one thing that we saw with our businesses, and you hear this all the time, is the challenge of scaling. How do you ever scale? And especially if you don't have access to capital, you don't have the resources to do it. So we have an entire team whose entire job is helping our business owners scale their products. How do we take the tikka masala sauce, this is one of our companies, help them scale their production, get them into the Boston Public Schools, which they just started, Boston College, Mass General Hospital, I forget where else they're going. Fantastic. We also, though, understand that we are part of a food system, and we have to fix the system. So Commonwealth Kitchen also does a lot of production and working with a ton of farms. So all of you know this time of year, how many tomatoes are we all, oh my God, I can't have another tomato, right? The market crashes on the tomatoes, right? The farmers have grown all that money investment went in tomatoes, now we can't sell those tomatoes. Even the food banks don't want the tomatoes, what do we do with them? Well, we process them. So we are finishing up processing 50 tons. It's the size of 8 school buses worth of tomatoes right now that we're purchasing from our farm partners across Massachusetts. All of that food is then being made into sauces and pizza sauce that we're working on with John on, and it's going into public schools, colleges, hospitals, community centers. We're selling it. That's part of what we're doing to build our market. But it also means we're connecting the dots. So now we're taking that tomato sauce and we're getting it onto a menu at a college. We're bringing that with the mole sauce and the empanadas and the other items. So really trying to think about what can we do, all the places where we know our supply chain is broken and there are all those challenges, what can we do with a platform that we have to connect those dots? So that's the work that we do. And the why is economic opportunity, wealth creation, economic justice. That's what we do. We happen to be doing it in food, so that's delicious and really fun, but it's really fundamentally about how do we actually create a food economy for all of us. There, go. Drop the mic, man.
Hey everybody, my name is John. I'm the CEO, co-founder.
Is that one on?
Yeah, I think it's good. I'm the CEO, co-founder of a company called One Mighty Mill. We make organic stone mill breads and bagels. Sell primarily, focus of our company sells to retailers like Whole Foods, Market Basket, Costco. My why, or why of my team, is our mission. So it's to stand up to the industrialization of food by building our own stone mill food system. That's a very unique why, because nobody really knows what stone mill means. The way that I landed on that and kind of got our team to land on that with me is I spent almost 15 years building a healthy fast food restaurant chain, up and down the East Coast with my best friend. We started in Boston, and the idea of the company was to, what we said was to make real food fast. And that journey kind of led us to realize that real food was transparent. And so we really dug into our supply chain, and we really kind of became almost a farm-to-table kind of concept. And as we built regionally, we created our own regional food systems, and so we could go all the way back to source, almost everything on our menu. And the one place that we couldn't figure out how to tell that final source piece was always bakery. So we could tell you where the turkey that we ground in-house for our turkey burgers, we knew what farms we were sourcing from, who the producer was. For New England, we were sourcing from Highland Farms right in New Gloucester. Potatoes were from Hatfield, Mass, and we did that region by region, but every time we moved to a different region, the story about bread or the buns that we sold, it always started and ended with the bakery. And so for 15 years, you see a lot of different things happening with consumer behavior, and we watched all this rise in gluten intolerance, and fear of carbs, and just kind of this idea that bread was processed food, which it really is, but with no true understanding of why. And so when we left that business, it was all about figuring out why could we spend 15 years trying to build this farm-to-table concept, but have no connection to wheat or flour or farms. It was always just this thing that came out of a bakery. And even from the best bakeries, or whole wheat, or whatever our formulation was to deliver it. And so, what I believe is that we have been completely disconnected from the staff of life. So we as consumers, we want a connection to coffee, to wine, to eggs. And for some reason, the idea of bread is always just about the bakery, or it's just about the label. And so bread has become an ultra-processed food. And you can't undo the system without going back to the original way. And that original way is making flour by crushing the seed with stones, rather than pushing through this industrial system that leads our country. And so we built and I'm not going to tell you the whole story of my life, but we started 6 years ago. We built our first stone mill in England, Massachusetts. We sourced 100% of our wheat for 2 years from one organic farmer in Richmond County, Maine. And we had this aspiration to build a national brand around this concept of
And John, you've been going to work with different farms to teach them the methodology and actually to build out your supply chain. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I don't teach farmers anything. They teach me. So we
Great.
I learned everything from our original farmer partner. This guy's name, he's a father and daughter. His name is Matt Williams, and he's the first grower to bring back organic wheat to the state of Maine. So I spent an entire summer trying to learn, just because nobody knows anything about wheat. And so we definitely don't teach anybody. We teach people about flour. Our knowledge is 100% how you stone mill flour and then how you deliver it to spec consistently so that your products run through a system without failing. Which is there is no data on this. Like we're kind of carving a trail. But I would say what we've done is we've tried to take what our first farmer partner does in terms of sustainability and their own standards. So we call them our supply chain standards, and then make sure we vet that against the new growers we bring in. So we work right now with about 6 different organic growers.
Amazing.
We've been fortunate. We've been able to build mills on both sides of the country, and we've been able to source as much regional organic meat as we can, based on the geography of the mills. We build in California, and so it's really amazing. We source 100% from growers within about 150 miles from our mills. We can't do that. We can't do that in the Northeast. It's not possible. I thought it was when we started,
Amazing.
but yeah. So that's
Amazing.
our supply chain.
That's great. When Ray spoke about thinking the business would be fun, I think this is something for everybody to know, that it's really a labor of love when somebody steps into a role of creating a consumable product. There's a lot of hurdles. Having been on the brand side prior to stepping into the nonprofit world to help create community for founders, I was working alongside of founders, and burnout is real. There's a lot of challenges, and when we talk about sustainability, we often think of sustainability as it pertains to agriculture or the environment, the things that we can really see in front of us, or the things at least that are spoken about in the media more prominently. One thing that I want to bring forward in our conversation today is sustainability as it pertains to the business, because all of these smaller makers and manufacturers and creators and crafters, if they can't sustain, we don't have the next generation of products. So I'm going to actually ask each of you to talk through, what does sustainability internally for your operation, even as a nonprofit, look like? How does your business practice self-care, if you will? And anybody can begin.
Sure, I'll go. So I didn't mention this before, so we have a line of retail products that we sell into about 1,600 stores across the country. And as I was discussing with a fellow brand founder last night, CPG is really hard. It is just so hard to do it well and do it profitably. And we have this kind of unique belief at Oceans Balance that seaweed can be profitable, but you just have to be thoughtful about how you do it. And we've learned a lot. We've learned so much along the way. When we first started, we were all in on getting into as many stores as possible, as quickly as possible. And we learned the hard way that that's not necessarily the smart way to do it. Because you can, we're all good at what we do here. We know how to sell things, and so we can sell things. And then if they get into the store, if they don't sell, then there was really no point in getting it into the store in the first place. So we'll talk a little bit about why they didn't sell in a minute. But rethinking that whole distribution model, we decided to not embrace the traditional distribution model with big distributors charging lots of fees and kind of just eating away at all of your profit. And we've really pulled back from that and are looking more in a more direct role where we're talking to stores and larger chains directly and working with them directly and not passing through that middleman. It's more work, for sure it's more work. I have stores calling me all the time with their questions now, But it's good. You make a relationship with each store. Each call is worth your time. But the business is profitable. Their margins are better. So they might not be as many, but the ones that we have are more profitable. So that's one thing. I'd say the second thing is, and I think Bree would agree with me, we in the seaweed industry, we are ahead of our time. We are promoting a food and products that this country in general isn't really ready for yet. Seaweed's been consumed in Asia for thousands of years. They know what to do, they love it, they put it in everything that they eat. There's nothing to talk about there. Here, there's a lot to talk about. And we realize that we need to meet consumers where they are. And so we have products that speak to certain communities, for example, macrobiotic communities. They've been using seaweed for generations. And so that's a good option for us right now. And we have products that are clean and sustainable and compostable packaging. So we're meeting them where they are with products that we think are of better quality. And at the same time, this is where we have started to really rethink our strategy. Rather than focusing solely on the retail side, we're also looking at larger food manufacturers who themselves have a larger footprint, both from a social media perspective and just a retail footprint. And they are looking to meet their sustainability goals by using more sustainable inputs. And seaweed ticks so many boxes in a very sustainable and delicious way. So we're working with larger food manufacturers who have these bigger budgets, and they're now bringing out products that contain seaweed. So they're helping us. They're helping us educate the consumers so that as we think about our next product, there's more awareness. There's more awareness. And so it's a two-pronged, if not three-pronged approach, because we're also looking at it from a food service perspective as well. And by focusing on different ways of getting seaweed in front of people, that has helped us to just be a more sustainable company and a profitable one, which is just so refreshing.
And profit is so key. I think that we have a little bit of a polarized relationship with profit in our country, primarily because of the large conglomerates that I think have kind of taken advantage in different scenarios. But in the same way that we keep a house and pay our bills and have to keep a roof over our heads, businesses have to do the same. They have to clear all of their expenses, and then there has to be money for the operator to actually be able to live and feed their family and nourish their home. And that's, I think, a very real reality for some of the smaller businesses, is how to build profitably, specifically within the CPG industry, which there are a lot of players in the supply chain from the field to the shelf. There's a lot of people in between. Just given time constraints, I'm gonna hop to you, Jen, about how do you practice business self-care? Because you're like saving the world one plate at a time.
Where's the alcohol?
I know. We're gonna blame that one on the university. No alcohol. Yeah, how do you practice self-care, Jen? For yourself, but as how you show up for your business as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's a work in progress for all of us, aren't we? Aren't we all works in progress? And coming out of COVID, the world is just different. And so I appreciate the notion of community, right? This work is really hard, and it's easy to get alone and feel alone when you're an entrepreneur and a founder. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing about a place like Commonwealth Kitchen and Fork Food Lab that's here and others is we're creating a place where you have other people to say, what the hell? Why did I decide to do this? What am I? All of those things, which is so life-affirming, right? Or, hey, I went to this event and you should go. Or I went to that event, never go again, right? But all of those things help to fill our soul and fill our cup. And so I would just say that, like, these kinds of ways to connect with people and to build your own networks and to build your own relationships it's moments. It's a grind, and every day is the grind. And so what are those little things we can do that, I'll say for me in my work, seeing that business with that first time they went out and they went to do some sale, and now they came back and they're just beaming and they're, oh my God, it's amazing, right? Or that the cupcake finally came up right, or, well, the didn't come up right, but I got to eat it anyway, like whatever, right? Like it's finding the moments. I also just want to piggyback a little bit on what Lisa said, which is about this idea of that it's from field and seed to shelf. and to say one of the things that we have seen very clearly is you heard me, I come at this from a real estate development. What the hell do I know about this? I know how to eat, I barely know how to cook. But I'm a really good problem solver. And what I keep seeing is the grocery store, oh my God, terrible. Like, all of the ways that it's hard to get on that shelf and stay on the shelf, and everybody in the middle that's taking the money, that's taking the margin and putting all back on these little entrepreneurs, they'll never make it, especially when you've got the big guys they're just looking to gobble up businesses. So we keep looking at, well, where else are we all eating? And so what Tania's doing, why are we connected with them? Colleges, hospitals, K through 12s. Oh my God, City of Boston? There's more like colleges and hospitals in the City of Boston than there are in all of Maine, right? So we can, but also cultural institutions, hotels, right? There's events, the zoo, there are so many places that people are eating, and we are willing to pay in some of those places, and every single one of them, just about, it's Sodexo or Aramark or Compass. Like, let's just name it, or Delaware North. These are the 4 companies that control the vast majority of every one of those accounts. You go to the airport, it's one of them. You go to the convention center, it's one of them. You go to a baseball game or a football game, it's one of them. Where's their food coming from? Cisco, Barilla, Monsanto, right? Heinz. For a long time, we could not get our tomato sauce into Boston Children's Hospital, despite that they wanted it, because Sodexo had an agreement with Heinz for Heinz to pay Sodexo $1 million a year for the right to sell them their tomato sauce. We at Commonwealth Kitchen, we tried to get the New England Aquarium food service contract. We said, oh man, this would be great. It's a $4 million a year contract. We came in second. Why? Sodexo got the contract. Why? They wrote a check for $1 million to the aquarium for the right to have that 3-year contract. So we are up against a system that does not work for the things we're doing. So the community is even more important. How we are trying to do this in different ways is more important. Leveraging partnerships is more important. And finding these other places. So what we are finding is, where are the places where our businesses can keep the margin?
Yeah.
Where is it that that money's staying with them and not going to all these intermediaries that are doing all of these things that are not transparent, that are making it very hard for our businesses? And so for all of you thinking about this, I appreciate, Lisa, that is the life lesson. Like, Whole Foods is not the be-all and end-all. Wegmans is not, right? John, you're doing that, but you're also in the Springfield Public Schools, and you're also in all these other places, like, because that's actually, not only is that about change and about building bigger system, but also to try to really change the industrial food system the way it is right now and move into a different direction.
Yeah.
I'm on my soapbox again.
No, you're great. You're great. We love you, Jen. Yeah. And as we have a more educated society and consumers are more aware of where their food comes from, they start to demand different things. So as people are showing up at the retail stores asking for specific products, as people are showing up at the aquarium looking for accountability and traceability in the food, it makes a difference. It moves the needle. It helps with swaying decisions. So I think how society shows up demanding for change and voting with their dollars absolutely impacts the shifts that we're starting to see within the food system. And in terms of the actual cost of food, too, I think this is a key piece of the conversation as we're talking about profitability. Hot in the media is inflation, the cost to feed your family, how much food prices are rising. And we definitely see a lot of the larger conglomerates able to keep their costs down and offering highly processed food options. And the smaller makers, the smaller crafters, are the ones who are really looking to bring forward real food, right? And so I'd love to hear your perspective, let's say, John, on what you're seeing. What are we unearthing here? Are we actually drilling down to what the real cost of real food is? Or what are you seeing in the supply chain in terms of how you're measuring costs and cost of goods?
So our cost basis is completely upside down in terms of, if you bought commodity flour, you pay 25% of what it costs us to stone mill it. So, I think accessibility is hard because I do believe that, like, giving people access, like, it's not my job to make food cheap. It's my job to make food nutritious and to push it through a system that can deliver it at the best cost possible. And I don't think if I'm incentivized to make it cheaper, then I'm not going to do it. So I think the educational piece, I think that the world needs to know is that, yes, it costs more, but like, obviously, like, it's all these external costs that people don't think about, which is, everybody gets it, right? Cheap food is really cheap. But what I would say from the brand side that's interesting is, you know, I love all retailers, so this is a retailer here. But
That's just me,
you have to understand, retailers take different margin to sell your product. So if you shop, and I'm not gonna name a name, but if you shop at a really, I mean, it's an awesome customer for us, but their margin structure is 45-50%. So if we sell it for 5, they're gonna sell it for 10.
Yep.
If you shop at a place like Market Basket, it's gonna be like half of it. And if you shop at a place like Costco, it's gonna be half of that. And so when you think about accessibility, it's more than the manufacturer. It's also like, there's so many other touch points. So I do think one thing we're very proud of, and I don't think whether or not we made it accessible ourselves or it's just we found a new partner. But our bread and calc we measure it annually based on our like anniversary. So we sold over the last 6 months, because that's what we've been at Costco, we sold over 300,000 loaves of bread for less than $5 each, which that's something. But based on that, it's California grown, organic, stone milled, baked, all clean ingredients. Like we're proud of that.
Amazing.
So I do think, but that's not because there's other factors, right?
Sure.
We sold it through Costco, and they have a much different model. So I don't have a great answer to your question. But
I know, I think that
that's
was great.
kind of where-
It's a-
That's kind of how I think about accessibility.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a complicated question, for sure.
Yeah, that's fair. And Tanya, I mean, I think your organization helps really connect supplier to institution, and so there's fewer middlemen involved, perhaps. But could you speak to that in terms of how are we unearthing the real cost of food here?
I wish that was sort of more of the role that we could play, because it is a really helpful role. No, I think you know, the real work of doing those connections is happening within the businesses on the ground with folks like Jen, who is you know, working to bring good prices to farmers in our region for the products that they have. It takes an immense amount of creativity and drive to do that. And so that is one thing that our organization is trying to do, is try to find ways to make that a little easier, whether it's connecting additional funding sources into things, whether it is connecting the right people at the right time, being able to help tell the stories, because right now with our system as it is, you all have described it so beautifully, horribly, but beautifully, in that it's a system that isn't really working right, and that it's just critical to be able to tell the stories of why stone ground flour is so much better and more important and worth having. And it's important to find ways to, you know, we were talking earlier, John, and you were saying how like schools are not necessarily where you're making the profit on this, but it's being able to bring these foods into institutions and find ways to make that happen, to figure out ways to make those margins work is important, because that is an accessibility piece. So I think thinking about the markets is really critical. I think telling the stories about the food so that people understand why it makes sense and why it's worth it will help in the long run. And you know, shout out to the folks who are working within these systems in all different ways to try to make that happen. It's hard work.
Yeah, it sure is. And I think, you know, as you're talking about how you get the education out there to the consumer, there's so many trends that kind of come and go, and there's so many different messages out there, whether it's gluten-free, everybody needs to be gluten-free, or no carbs, or the fat-free trend. Remember that one? That was great. It's like, oh, actually, fat's good for you, right? And so I think consumers in general are a little skeptical sometimes, right? Because we've been fed so many different messages that vary decade over decade. And so, Ray, how do you go about getting your message out to your community about why your water is different? Why should people care that it's gravity-fed? How do you go about breaking through some of the noise out there in the community?
One of the ways we do this is by gratefully being invited into these shows and trying to
Thank you,
manage my
Edible.
way through this. On every bottle, what we put is a QR code, so you can instantly go to our website, which shows you a video, and I believe we are the only ones in the world that actually show you the source. Coming tomorrow, we're going to be on Bloomberg TV on the show called The World's Greatest. On our social media, it has all the time and dates about that. But, I think from an entrepreneur standpoint, when you talk about profitability, before profitability shows up, we're not only talking about business sustainability, but we need to speak about human sustainability, and that is self-care. And I know myself, lucky enough to have an incredible gal showing up for me today, and my daughter, and now my grandchildren. I get internal support from them when, things aren't going right. I think when we talk about sustainability and cost, we're also seeing it from a raw goods from the manufacturer. I believe there's a three-step where you have the raw materials that it costs you to manufacture your product, who, depending on how much you're ordering, the prices will go up for smaller orders. So I hate to say that price has to then be passed on to your bottom line. And then there is the distributor's cost, who, as a manufacturer, you don't set that. Now, you got to remember, too, the distributor's taking a chance on you. They want your product to do well, but the percentages might be different from you compared to somebody that they know is going to be a good sell. Every time they walk into the store, they know the store is going to reorder that product. So there's another cost, and then there is the cost to the retailer. So I think, luckily, from what I've seen, too, with the internet, is trying to engage people, send out product. I've sent out so many presentation boxes, and one or two of them actually contacted me back, which is wonderful. Like and share from that aspect. Engage. Tell somebody about it. There's so many good companies out there nowadays, too. With the internet, like you can research One Mighty Mill, find out what they're about, find out their story. If there is something that they have going on, maybe in their infancy, they might not be able to change that. But as they grow, because of your dollars, they can thus change that. So I think it's not only business, but it's personal sustainability that counts. And our business, we're very lucky that because we do not pump it out of the ground, the spring has a recorded history from over 200 years. And not that I would ever want to, but if we walked away from it today, the flow is a flow and will always be the flow. Mother Nature provided enough for us. I also believe in that, too. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Ray.
If I can just jump in for 1 second, is to say one thing that, as I'm listening to people, that it strikes me is that how much all of us are working across the supply chain, right? You're sourcing, you're farming, you're making the product, you're selling the product. You're sourcing, you're working with the farmers to figure out what to do. We do a lot of that. I didn't talk about how we got to figure this one out. Like, we're working with some of the wheat farmers to help them with cover crops to improve their soil, and taking that cover crop, which very often is a yellow field pea is what they use, and we're turning that into falafel, which we're now selling into markets and building market for the pea, right? But what's intriguing to me is just how much, as we are doing this work, we are all sort of leaning into this idea that we got to go all the way back to make our brand be the thing that we want it to be, to stand for, and that this is the opposite of what you see that's in the big food world, where, every Cheerio is the same Cheerio with a different name on it, but it's all that, right? Like, how big food has worked and what are we all doing as a response to that. So it's just intriguing to me to think about how, and when we think about what is real food,
Yeah.
and when we talk about real cost of food, I mean, my God, let's talk about, 40% of all food that is grown and produced in the world is thrown out. 40%. Like that alone. So let's talk about what, despite our industrial, everything that's supposed to be about like efficiency and how efficiency actually creates a lot of problems in our system and actually creates, I was looking up the book, I don't know if anybody saw this book that, I'll have to find it again, but talking about how like the fact that there's only like 3 companies that do that, all the big meat that's in the United States, and how in fact they set the price. So in fact, while we think it's expensive, they're busy, like every time they're just raising the price. And so we have to rethink what it means, what real cost of food is. It's not McDonald's and it's not these, it's what John is doing and it's what these guys are doing. Like that's the real cost of food. And if we don't start talking about that in the schools, that it's not $2 a plate, it should be $5 a plate. And if we don't continue to do that, all of us, then we continue to get this food system that is killing us, right? That is literally, our health care is killing us. And so I think this is why it's so hard, because it's so friggin' complicated, but it's also encouraging to think about the ways that there's some structural things that are happening here that, anyway, I'm just struck by that as a theme.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and the folks building the smaller brands are doing the work to break all of that down, right? And I think COVID taught us a lot. When the shelves were empty, supply chain was really constrained with the demands of bringing products across the country. And I think one of the key lessons there was to know your farmers and know who your local suppliers are when shopping, trying to shop local. Tania unearthed some amazing data just about what our actual local buying trends look like. And I think as we all contemplate how we can support who these small manufacturers are, and buying local is always going to be the number one, like voting with your dollars, not just because it's good for the people building the business, but also because it's good for you, right? Not to have something it's good for you, it's good for the environment, not to have something just transported across the country. But Tania, can you take us through a little bit of the data that you unearthed about what it looks like right now, buying trends from national products versus local?
Yeah, let's just start with a little pop quiz here. I'm just curious what people in the audience think. In terms of the amount, let's just talk about Maine right now. We're in Maine, right? Many of us are from Maine. Not me, but I'd love to be. But anyway, so in Maine, we have a lot of farms here, a lot of great production, a lot of wonderful food businesses. What percentage do you think of the food spend here in this state is local? Who thinks it's more than 50%? 40%?
Smart.
30%? 20%? 10%? 5%? So in Maine, there is a total of $12.7 billion spent on food. 432 million of that is local across all kinds of outlets: retail, grocery store, little grocery stores, supermarkets, institutions, all of that. That's 3.4% of our food spend.
Y'all gotta do better.
And that's pretty close to average across New England, too. Vermont does a little better, interestingly. They have an incredible local food program. And I do want to give a nod to Sodexo because they have been a great partner in that state on that and in other places as well. For all of the problems within the system, there are people who are trying to make a change. And I would say this information comes from something called the Local Food Count, which just got released this week. It's part of a project FINE was part of. It's being run by the New England Food Systems Planners, which includes sort of lead food systems planners in each state in New England. And we did a deep dive trying to understand what was the local food count, because we have a New England food vision. I don't know if y'all are aware of that, but the goal is to try to have 50% of our food produced within our region by 2060. And you brought up COVID, and that really showed how important important regional food system is, that it's just critical to our sustainability, it's critical to our health, it's critical to our economies, and our number is so low. And I actually was shocked by this too. I did not think it was that low. So I appreciate you all playing along with that. But also, I think it just shows like the incredible work that we have to do, because it is critical to our lives, our livelihoods, to be thinking about the food system that we have here and making it work better. And a lot of resources go into supporting local food. I mean, Representative Pingree this morning was talking about a lot of the work within the food bill to do that and the places that it shows up there. There are many nonprofits like mine. We represent a network of like hundreds and hundreds of businesses and nonprofits and agencies working on local food, and yet after Fine's been around for I think 11 or 12 years now, we're still at 3.4%. So we're not doing things the right way. And I really appreciate this panel who's been giving example after example of like, don't take the system for what it is. Think outside the box. We have to rebuild in a way that is actually working for the goals we have. Take a look at what those goals are. Build towards that, not just working from where we are and putting little Band-Aids on it. So I encourage you all to take this as not a downer, but incentive, because we have incredible resources to do this work and to make it work better. And I look forward to working with you all on that.
Yeah, I really appreciated what Bree said earlier. It's like all is not fine, you know.
Yeah.
But there are people out there doing the work, and we're all accountable for participating in making change. And change is really hard, and it takes a long time. But we all have to put our thinking caps on and figure out how we can restructure, rebuild, reimagine, and work towards making the world a better place for granddaughters and future generations to come. It's our responsibility. So we're doing the work, and we invite you all to join us.